Hello friends, welcome back to Blue Ocean Strategy. It's one of those portions of strategic management which can be called as an art to be developed, and that we have seen up till now. How strategy canvas is structured, how we can try to put up several organizations, several products in the framework of strategic canvas and eliminate, reduce, raise and create grid. Now let us take a step ahead and think about first characteristics of good strategy and then 6 principles, and that is where we would end the discussion on Blue Ocean Strategy. And by that time I am sure we would have reached to a place wherein we would have understood how strategic choices should be made with the perspective of competition in our view, for beating the competition on one side and for bypassing the competition or making the competition irrelevant on the other side. Both of the choices are there. If somehow compulsorily we have to go and fight the competition and beat the competition, we can choose that kind of a strategic perspective and should go for that. And on the other side, if somehow we wish to raise the value, reduce the cost, eliminate cost value trade off from the scenario, and we wish to go for a lot of differentiation while holding the costs or reducing the cost, we can choose in terms of Blue Ocean Strategy framework for creating new market space. So let us see what are the 3 characteristics of a good strategy which the authors describe. The authors say that a good strategy comprises 3 main characteristics. One is focus. Every great strategy has focus, focal point, concentricity associated with that strategy, and a company's strategic profile or value curve should clearly show that. What am I focusing upon? Narayan Hrudayalaya focuses upon reaching out to the people who may not be able to afford the heart related services, cardiac services, who might not be even aware of that they are suffering from heart ailments so much, because they are not in touch with such kind of doctors who can address those kind of things for them. General physician would have told them that your heart is not functioning well, but they would not have gone beyond that basically, and they have helped millions of such people as far as especially Indian scenario goes. So focus. Divergence. The value curves of the Blue Ocean strategists always stand apart and they differentiate their profiles from the industry's average profile. What have you done differently and how have you done that so differently? So reaching out to people is one thing, that is your focal point. How differently you have done that? You have actually brought in the cardiac services in their price range while getting those things compensated for you through insurance policies. You have implemented satellite connectivity for reaching out to them so that their travel can be eliminated. You have gone for manufacturing efficiency based systems in your hospital, which was for the first time, and that is very interesting, and we do not have time to go into that detail, but you may please access several documentaries made on them, as I said. And that is where you have differently operationalized your operations. Compelling tagline. A good strategy has a clear cut and compelling tagline which is actually demonstrative of the fact that what this company is doing differently, how they are doing that, what is their focal point. In case of I would not be going into the taglines of Narayan Hrudayalaya or iNext or such kind of examples which I have chosen to demonstrate in front of you, but one of my favorites is Zindagi ke saath bhi, Zindagi ke baad bhi, LIC. And if you will try to put up LIC in this kind of a framework or Amul in this kind of a framework, that can also be conducively done, because you would realize that LIC somehow has been utilizing Blue Ocean framework for n number of years. There are some competitors who have been trying to stand in terms of life insurance space, but not many options are there. So LIC has been doing that differently, and their tagline actually justifies that, Zindagi ke saath bhi, Zindagi ke baad bhi. So that kind of a perspective should be there. So focus, divergence and compelling tagline. These are the three characteristics of a good strategy. Now let's look at 6 principles of blue ocean strategy. W. Chan, Kim and Rennie provided 6 principles that drive the successful formulation and implementation of blue ocean strategy. So there are 4 principles associated with formulation and 2 are associated with implementation. What are those? Let's see. And every formulation principle is associated with risk factor, that there is some risk factor associated with every formulation principle, and we must have those things in mind while we are going ahead with that. And you would realize in due course of time that despite of this kind of a risk factor, the formulation principle, if executed well, if structured well and executed well, it does well. And all these examples which we have been talking about, we have seen that this happened there. First is reconstruct market boundaries, and there is a search risk. I would be elaborating upon this very briefly after this. So, reconstruct market boundaries, search risk is there, how to search for that. Focus on the big picture, not the numbers. Did INEX do that? Did Honda Activa did that? Did Narayan Hrudayalaya did that? LIC, Amul, Arvind Eye Care, some organizations in Tata's, several other organizations, TCS, Wipro, IBM after a particular kind of a stage, Apple, Patanjali. Let's imagine that. So, when you focus on the big picture, there is a planning risk, how to actually structure that, because that requires so much of cooperation and integration from all the sides. So many people have to be brought on board basically. And then you have several kinds of constraints also. I will be talking about that. Reach beyond existing demand. When you are trying to create a demand, new demand, you see, addressing existing demand is easy because that is an identified kind of a thing basically. But when you reach beyond existing demand, there is a scale risk. That demand may not materialize at all. Get the strategic sequence right. Business model risk. If you have created a sequence and it does not work, for example, you have created a value chain for executing what you are thinking in terms of doing, it might not work. Ghadi detergent is one of those examples. They have created a distribution structure, it might not have worked for them at all. So, list Ghadi detergent in that list also, which I am talking about. Then there are execution principles. Now, there are risks associated with execution principles as well. Overcome key organizational hurdles, and there is an organizational risk. I took an example of Department of Management Studies IIT Roorkee, wherein we thought of projecting it and developing it as a management research based kind of a B school. There are several organizational risks associated with that. Would organization support us? Would we have such kind of a human resource or number of people who would be working and developing themselves as interdisciplinary researchers? Would we be able to get garner the support from other departments wherein we were contacting in terms of getting associated with us? Would organization help us? And so on. There are several kinds of things which you have to go for and project in front of different kinds of bodies, and they should be convinced on that yes, you want to do that. Build execution into strategy, management risk. And you see, this is the most important point, and this is an important phrase also, build execution into strategy. So much so that strategy starts getting executed by itself, it starts propelling itself. So, there is a management risk. If you are creating that kind of a process, how would you manage that basically? If it grows out of proportion, how would you do that? How would you structuralize that? How would you keep up to that level basically? That is what one has to understand. So, let us see these principles one by one and and then try to understand and try to decipher these. So, reconstruct market boundaries. Now, this first principle of blue ocean strategy is to reconstruct market boundaries to break from the competition and create blue oceans for that matter. And while thinking in terms of strategy canvas, I suggested and authors have prescribed that we should be thinking in terms of the points of competition to eliminate those points. So, break from the competition and create blue oceans. This principle addresses the search risk many companies struggle with. What should I be doing? What are those kind of things which I should be eliminating, raising, reducing and creating? The challenge is to successfully identify out of the haystack of possibilities that exist commercially compelling blue ocean opportunities. You are reconstructing market boundaries, you are actually creating new market space. if somehow you have started projecting yourself as a protein supplement for women Horlicks. That is what Horlicks tried to do. For example, Kellogg's strawberry for women, that is what they tried to do. And there are several other examples basically. And movie Padman is actually made on something, a subject which was dear to the heart of the protagonist, but the context of that movie somehow is associated with this kind of a thought process, blue ocean framework. And somehow Mangalyaan is also related with that. If you watch that movie, try to associate this thought process of developing Mangalyaan with this kind of a perspective. I think we can do that. I think we can somehow structuralize that thing with this kind of a perspective. Famous examples are Nano and several other examples are there. It is not necessary that every example would be a success story in terms of the sales which they would have generated, but it is my belief that if Nano would have persisted their business consistently for few more years, that would have become an accepted norm in Indian scenario and so on. Now, there are 6 basic approaches to remaking market boundaries called the 6 paths framework. First path is how do you reconstruct market boundaries? Let us look at that, and authors prescribe to that. Look across alternative industries. What are the alternatives where you can be looked upon as an alternative basically. So, up till now you have been focusing yourself as a substitute, but where you can be looked as an alternative. You see, up till now we have been analyzed that what alternatives might be there for us. Now, this is from this side, what kind of alternative we may become for as far as others go or different space goes. Look across strategic groups within the industry. Novo Nordisk is a famous example wherein they developed this insulin injection which can be administered by the patient themselves. It is a very famous example, and there are several other examples. Lego toys is there, IKEA furniture is there, Barbie doll is there, several kinds of examples are there. Look across the chain of buyers. Who are the buyers and how it would replicate and percolate? Can we think in terms of Amway, Oriflame, these kind of experiments which have been largely successful with this kind of a perspective? Can we think in terms of Hindustan Lever, Shakti project with this kind of a perspective? Yes, we can definitely think of these kind of projects with this kind of a perspective. Also, look across complementary product and services offerings. What are the complementary products when you would be presenting offerings? What are the complementary products which can be associated with your offerings? Look across functional or emotional appeal to buyers. Nakshatra, diamonds, Tanishq and several other kinds of things. I just took that name because I have talked about Tanishq earlier, but that emotional appeal which they tried to generate in terms of as far as the scenario goes. Can we think in terms of VIP Alpha with that kind of a perspective? Several other products are there. And I talked about scholastic books which are marketed for younger kids in the schools, that can also be done as far as the whole scenario goes and so on. Look across time. Authors have talked about European Union as with the time kind of a perspective. That can also be seen as an experiment, as a successful experiment when European Union was formed, and this is precisely what authors have described about in their book and demonstration when they talked about European Union and so on. This principle, when we are talking of focus on the big picture, not the numbers, this principle is key to mitigating the planning risk of investing lots of efforts and lots of time, but delivering only tactical red ocean moves. Here, an alternative approach to the existing strategic planning process that is based not on preparing a document, but on drawing a strategy canvas is worked upon, and that is where we tried to learn in terms of strategy canvas, and that is where I left you with this thought that somehow what would you do when you would be thinking in terms of I next on that strategy canvas. You may also think in terms of when Nirma was brought in as a product, you may try to draw Nirma on that strategy canvas, reminiscing that time when it was launched with that kind of a thought process. So, here looking at the big picture, not only the numbers. This approach consistently produces strategies that unlock the creativity of a wide range of people within an organization. And innovation we can talk at length, and for that you can please access to my subject innovation in marketing and marketing of innovation, where we have used immense number of examples to demonstrate these kind of things. So, wherein range of people within an organization open companies' eyes to blue oceans and are easy to understand and communicate for effective execution. Wherein you involve so many people to bring in, Nexa can be that kind of an experiment which Maruti Suzuki has done. There are several other kinds of products which are visible products, and so on, and probably several other examples would keep on coming to my mind when I would be talking about that. When Rasna was launched long back, it was a humongous success because of the fact that when I tried to put up Rasna in that space of blue ocean strategy, I realized that it actually broke the jinx of contemporary those days when it was launched. The kind of drinks which were offered as compared to the extracts which were offered, sharbat you may say, which was offered those days, Roo Afza, Kisan, and those kind of drinks were there. So, but Rasna came in as a different kind of a thing basically, and there was a time I remember every summers when school vacations used to start, every household used to make lots of Rasna in their home. They used to fill it in those bottles, and Rasna was a huge success. This approach consistently produces strategies that unlock the creativity of wide range of people, as I said, and open companies' eyes to the blue oceans and are easy to understand and communicate for effective execution. Rasna did that. Now, third is reach beyond existing demand. This principle is, it tries to aggregate demand, not by focusing on the differences that separate customers, but by building on the powerful commonalities across non-customers to maximize the size of blue ocean being created and new demand being unlocked, hence minimizing scale risks. Honda Activa, simple. This is what is demonstrative of this kind of a thing basically. Huge success story. Let us not go into the details, we have talked about that. Just visit their website, and if you are a user, now when you ride Honda Activa, try to feel that. You would imagine what I am talking of. There are 3 tiers of non-customers that can be transformed into customers. The first tier of non-customers is closest to your market, and that is what I was talking about when I was suggesting that when you are trying to go for a new market space. So, there are 3 tiers of as far as non-customers. So, first is closest to your market. They sit on the edge of the market. They are buyers who minimally purchase an industry's offerings out of necessity, but are mentally non-customers of the industry. They use it now and then. Several soft drink consumers were like that. When soft drinks they started including people with different kinds of flavors. It is a distant example, but somehow they are on the verge of these kind of things basically. It happened with mobile phones also once basically. You would say that every company is going towards blue ocean one or the other time. Yes, this may happen. Initial players definitely, if you will watch their initial stories, that would somehow link those stories with a blue ocean framework. Although, as I suggested, that when other organizations and other options, they start following them and they enter into red oceans and they are unable to keep up the pace to remain in blue ocean, then definitely that red ocean situation comes on. So, they are waiting to jump ship and leave the industry as soon as the opportunity presents itself. Did it happen with OTT platforms? Where are cable connections now? Are dish antennas vanishing from our space, or was it destined to be like that? And if it was destined to be like that, why companies were continuously investing in that till that collapse came in? Companies are intelligent enough to understand that, so they shouldn't have been investing in these kind of spaces. That means somehow they were going on a steep hill, and on the other side OTTs were thinking differently basically. Somehow it happened. So, you see, there are several kinds of examples which we may talk about in this space. The second tier of non-customers, and you see that this has to be understood, and this is an important element. So, the second tier of non-customers is people who refuse to use your industry's offerings. They say no, sorry. For example, people, they never wanted to paint their own houses. Asian Paints, Nerolac, they taught them how to paint their own houses, and people started doing that. So, who refuse to use your industry's offerings. These are buyers who have seen your industry's offerings as an option to fulfill their needs but have voted against them. Many a times people do not use the product at all. The third, many consumers who have not been consuming pizzas also, they can fall into these categories, but are they doing something with the perspective of Blue Ocean, including everyone, non-customers into their space? I don't think that pizza companies are trying to do that. Although samosa producers or samosa, I would not say manufacturers, but samosa walas, they have tried to do that, including everyone, and especially dosa became very popular when somehow they customize the offering. It might not be very resonating example, but these examples, they justify these specific points in our common lives. That is why I am using those. So the third tier of non-customers is farthest from your market. They are non-customers who have never thought of your market's offerings as an option at all. By focusing on key commonalities across these non-customers and existing customers, companies can understand how to pull them into their new market. Nike did that by introducing different kinds of shoes for almost everyone. Look around you. You would realize that people have started using Nike. Elders, office goers, they changed the perspective of people in terms of formal shoes and casual shoes. Now shoes are shoes, more or less. Levi's, they did that. Uniqlo is doing that in India. Several kinds of people are purchasing Uniqlo products, and several kinds of people are wearing 6-pocket jeans and pants and cotton pants and those kind of things basically, and so on, and they have tried to do that. Several other organizations, they have tried that, and so on. This time when you visit a shopping mall, try to see who is doing something with in relation to Blue Ocean strategy, and this is what we are talking of. So first tier is soon to be non-customers who are on the edge of your market waiting to jump ship. If you offer them something which is relevant to them and which they feel that yes, they should go for, as in case of movies, Batman, or let us say Pink Panther, Jurassic Park, Bahubali, so on, everyone watches that, everyone watches that. There was a time when people were watching only Mr. Amitabh Bachchan's movie, everyone watches that once, as they used to say. So, but then all these movies, wherein North India, many people wouldn't have heard of those actors who have acted in movies like Bahubali, but this was seen by almost everyone. How did they go for this kind of thing? People were waiting for these kind of movies. Those are historical movies constituted with this kind of a perspective. Brilliant examples. Second tier, refusing non-customers who consciously choose against your market. I would not eat this at all, or I would not consume, I would not wear these kind of products at all. I would not use this kind of an automotive at all somehow. SUVs, MUVs, and then crossovers. Can we see crossovers with this kind of a perspective? Somehow we may think of that. Third tier, unexplored non-customers who are in markets distant from yours. There are several products which may fit into this space also. Now get the strategic sequence right. This principle designs of a strategy that allows you not only to provide a leap in the value to the mass of buyers, but also to build a viable business model to produce and maintain profitable growth for itself. The sequence should be right. It shows you how to ensure that your company builds a business model that profits from the blue ocean it is creating. It addresses business model risk. The perspective here is that you have to imagine that it's going to work. You have to look into the elements which will make it work. It can be your human resource acumen, it can be something related to how you do that, it can be the support of retailers which you can bring on board, and so on. And for getting the strategic sequence right, these are the elements. So buyer utility. Is there exceptional buyer utility in your business idea? Have you focused upon that? No, then rethink. If yes, then go for price. Is your price easily accessible to the mass of the buyers? If no, rethink. If yes, go for cost. Can you attain your cost target to profit at your strategic price? If no, then rethink. If yes, then go for adoption. What are the adoption hurdles in actualizing your business idea? Are you addressing them upfront? If no, rethink. Yes, a commercially viable blue ocean idea. MS Office 365 to me has crossed 2-3 stages, but adoption still is somehow to me is a question. Overcoming key organizational hurdles. The principle deals with organizational risk and drives the effective execution of the Blue Ocean strategy. It lays out how leaders and managers alike can surmount the cognitive, resource, motivational and political hurdles in spite of limited time and resources in executing Blue Ocean strategy. Cognitive, resource, motivational and political hurdles. Cognitive means waking employees up to the need of the strategic shift. Let's do it. Limited resources, the greater the shift in the strategy, greater it is assumed are the resources needed to execute it. For example, Department of Management Studies had to rise and resources were limited. We could not bring on board thousands of students in one go. So, we have to rise, we have to think differently. Motivation, how do you motivate key players to move fast and tenaciously to carry out a break from the status quo? Swatch did that, Titan did that, and politics within the sphere. Cognitive hurdle, an organization wedded to a status quo. Political hurdle, opposition from powerful vested interests wherein even for example, the leader of the organization may be thinking differently and he says that well it is a good idea, but sorry my agenda is something different. That can also be a hurdle. How to cross that hurdle? Motivational hurdle, unmotivated staff. They do not want to do it, they just do not want to do it somehow. Things are going on well. So, what things are good, we are rising, we are number one somehow. Probably Kodak would have thought about things differently if somehow they were not complacent at all. We have been talking about this kind of a thing in management literature with an element of complacency. IBM broke that jinx and then entered in a different kind of a phase and they grew, and many organizations they have vanished more or less. Where is compact computers now? I do not know much about that. So, resource hurdle, limited resources. Now, build execution into strategy. To build people's trust and commitment deep in the ranks and inspire their voluntary cooperation, companies need to build execution into strategy from the start. This principle allows companies to minimize the management risk of distrust, non-cooperation and even sabotage. This management risk is relevant to strategy execution in both red and blue oceans, and here is an important element we should be remembering and what authors try to suggest, that this management risk is relevant to strategy execution in both red and blue oceans, but it is greater for blue ocean strategy because its execution often requires significant change. I am leaving you with this thought and a case study which I may talk about later on in some of our discussions. Dubai has been developed with a blue ocean strategy framework, an important sphere which they created around themselves, an understandably success story, an oil based economy which reduced their oil based economic progression from a large size to a minimal kind of oil based kind of economic development towards being a real estate hub, a trade hub, a banking and finance hub, an entertainment hub and so on, and they have done that successfully in due course of time. Try to visit their website, try to fetch the case study from the source, Kim Moborn, Blue Ocean Strategy, How to Create Uncontested Market Space and Make the Competition Irrelevant, Harvard Business Review Press. I will be catching up back with you with lots of insights on strategic management in my subsequent sessions. Till then, goodbye.